Welcome back to Blender for Blogs, where we are using Blender to edit videos for our blogs. I'm Justin, and you can check me out at blenderfrenzy.com or over on YouTube at Blender Frenzy. But we're going to get right into it. We are actually going to be talking about how to use Blender to create your little text here. So we're just going to get right into it. Last time we created this little text PNG with a transparency background to overlay on top of our chalkboard here, and we used Google Slides for that. So this time I'm going to show you how to do this exact same thing, but using Blender's 3D text. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go over to our default here. This is our default 3D view. And before I do anything else, I'm going to copy it. So I'm just going to go add a new screen and rename this to, let's see, what do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we got 04, just default. Or you can name it 3D or something like that, whatever you want to name it as. And the easiest way, you could just select everything and delete it. I'm actually just going to do a plus and then new here for a scene. And then I'm going to do Shift A to add in a camera. And you can see this camera if I use my middle mouse button and rotate. I can rotate around just like this. You can see my camera is facing down off to the side, something weird like that. So a couple ways you can change that. What we're going to do is hit the N key, N as in Nancy, to pull up the properties, and here's our rotation. So I'm just going to set, you can set all those to 0. So 0 tab, 0 tab, 0 tab, and then it should be, and then enter there. And there, it should be facing directly downward there, if it wasn't already. Now, there's another way you can do that. If I just undo all of those, if I go down here, you can go Object and then Clear, and you can see clear the location, rotation, and scale. So Alt-G and Alt-R. Actually, Alt-R is really the only one we need because the location is fine. But if I do Alt-R, you can see it just resets all of those to 0. So the next thing I want to do is grab this blue handle and pull it up. And you can see as I do that, it is locked onto the Z axis. This blue axis is the Z axis, the green axis is the Y, and the red axis is the X axis. So actually I gotta do it Alt G now to just bring that back to 0. And then I'm just gonna bring it up on the Z. Now, I can also do this by hitting G, and if I just start moving it, it just moves freely in free space. But then I can lock it to the Z axis by hitting Z. So if I hit Z or Z for you Commonwealth people, I can then slide it and it's locked on to that. And if I just click, then it will lock that into place. Now, the reason I show you that method is because the next thing we're going to do is go into camera mode. So if I hit 0 on the numpad, it goes into view the camera. And if I middle mouse, it will break out of that. So hit 0 again. And again, this is the 0 on the numpad. If you don't have a numpad, again, you can go to your file user preferences. Over on the Input tab, you can go emulate numpad. And then this will, the main 1 to 0 keys act as the numpad ones do, useful for laptops. So if you don't have a numpad, just use that. I do, so I'm not going to select that. Now, if I scroll with my mouse wheel, I can scroll out just in my view, but the camera stays in place. So this is where our G comes into play. So if I hit G again, now I can move it around, but if I lock it to the Z by hitting Z or Z and then move my mouse, you can see now I'm moving up and down just like I was out here, moving this G and Z up and down just like that. And that's going to be useful for us when we are aligning our view. So what I'm going to do is align the camera to the edges of the grid. So I'm going to hit G, Z, and then just move it to right about there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I like to do it just like this. Now, remember when I hit the middle mouse and move around, it actually breaks out of the camera view. Now this is a little troublesome if you want to pan, but there's a couple ways you can get around this. So hit 0 again to go back in here. So if I scroll in here and I want to zoom in and pan the view, I hit Shift first and hold. So hold Shift and then you do your middle mouse button, and then you can pan around. So that way, if you're zooming in, you can kind of pan. If I want to come over here, hold Shift and then middle mouse and drag. But I actually don't like that because I don't want to continue to hit Shift all the time. So I actually want to lock this. So I'm going to change my user preferences, the input. So I'm going to go back to my user preferences, and then I'm going to change two things: rotate view. You can see here in the 3D view, rotate view is our middle mouse. That's what we've been doing. So I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to hit Shift and hold Shift and then middle mouse. So now it's Shift middle mouse. But if you notice, if I come over here and I hit Shift middle mouse, it doesn't do anything. And the reason is because there is a higher priority that's being taken place with just our regular middle mouse. So that is move view. So here, move view, 3D view, Shift middle mouse. We want to move the view. We don't want Shift middle mouse. We actually just want the middle mouse. So I'm going to click that and then press my middle mouse. And now if I come back over here, hopefully it should work. Yep, so I don't even have to press Shift anymore. I can just do my middle mouse. And that's going to be so much nicer when we're actually working with text, which is what we're about to do right now. So Shift A to add in text right here. And there you go, you have text. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit and pan just with my middle mouse because I can. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit Tab, and that goes into edit mode. And you can see that down here. If I hit Tab again, it goes to object mode. So Tab will go back and forth between object and edit mode. So in edit mode, you have this cursor here, and now I can just start backspacing, and then I can type whatever I want here. So let's do what I had before, which was A space plus space B space equals space, and then cat, just like that. Zoom out a little bit here, pan a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to hit Tab to go back out to edit mode, and what I can do, since this is selected, you can see it's selected because it has an orange border around it. If I hit A to deselect all, you can see nothing is selected. And then if I click on it again, you can see I have the 3D manipulator here, which in this case is only 2D, and you have that orange border. Now I can just either click and drag with my left mouse button or right mouse button, whichever you have to select. I can also hit G to grab, and then it'll move it around just like that. Right click to cancel. I can also grab the manipulator and lock it to those things. Control Z to undo that and undo that. You can also do the same thing. G, if you just hit G to grab, if I want to lock it to the Y or lock it to the X, I just hit Y or X, just like that. And then right click to cancel. Okay, so let's talk about text, baby. No, I did that last time. Okay, let's talk about font and formatting. So we're going to go over here to our properties panel. And with our text selected, coming over here to this F, this is our font object data. You can rename it here if you want. I think I'll do that. A plus B equals C, or cat, just so that we have that in the name. And that affects here. So where is we are in scene, which here. Oh, you can see that's highlighted here. And by the way, this is our outliner. So I have the outliner up here on the top. And here's our text, and the actual curve of the text is AB plus cat there. So I don't know why it doesn't rename it here. Maybe that's here. So I can do the same thing here. A plus B equals cat. All right, there we go. Now we can see that in there. Just in case we have more than one text, which we will, we can differentiate between the two pretty easy and select them and hide them and all that good stuff. Well, maybe I can't hide them. I don't know. Oh, I'm at edit mode all of a sudden. I don't know why. Huh, that's why. Okay, hide it. There you go. Okay, anyway, go back here with the font, and what we're going to do is we're going to skip all the stuff up here. We're just going to focus on the font for now. So if you go to Google and type in Google Fonts, and then click Google Fonts, we did this last time we went here, but what I want to do is show you how to download the font that you want. So last time we used Frederica the Great, which is right here. So I'm just going to click on that. And over here, if I click this plus, then down here it says one family selected. I'm going to click that, and this thing comes up here. It's a little convoluted to get to the download, but here it is. Download this selection. Click that, and then just download this to my fonts folder. I'm just going to make a fonts folder in my project folder, and then click save. I'm going to come over here and open that up. And you can see here is the TTF file. Now this is going to be for Windows exclusively. I don't know how to do this on Mac or Linux, but for Windows, if you double click this, then this will pop up, and all you have to do is hit install. So install that, and boom, then it's grayed out, and that means it's installed. And I'm going to go ahead and close this, and go back to Blender. So now over here in the font where it says regular, I'm going to go load new font from file by clicking that icon. And then I'm going to navigate to the Windows Fonts folder, which is just C:\Windows Fonts in Windows. And then I'm going to, up here where it has the search bar or filter by name, I'm just going to start typing Frederica. There we go, Frederica the Great. I'm going to double click, and boom, you can see what we have so far. Zoom in here a little bit. Now this text in particular is a little wonky, I suppose. So if you scroll up over here in the properties, mess with this resolution here. If you see something like this happening where it's just kind of like, it just doesn't look right, just try adjusting this. So see how as I adjust it up and down, it gives me different results. And for this one, it just looks like a resolution of 1 actually really works. So this is what it would look like. Okay, so let's change the color to this now. This is just the default solid color. So going over here right next to F, we have our materials. We're going to click on that and add a new material. And then in the diffuse here, we're going to keep it just like that. Now, I have to mention also we are in the Blender render. You can use the cycles render if you want. I know that the Blender render is going away, so you may want to become familiar with cycles. But for now, the Blender render in 2.79 works perfect for this kind of text because all I have to do is come down here and hit shadeless, and that's what the text is going to look like, that color. Come down here where it says viewport shading, and we're going to change that to material. Okay, and it looks a little bit weird because we have it selected and with that orange border, but if we hit A to deselect, you can see that looks a lot better. That looks actually just like in Google Slides when we added it there. So let's scroll out a little bit here so we can kind of get a more of a big picture. And then in this properties panel, scroll all the way down where it says background images. Click that, and the drop down, we're going to add in our image. Scroll down and click open and go to our graphics file. Remember we had that chalkboard background so that we can line everything up. We're going to do the exact same thing. We did this in Google Slides, just added that in the background there. And it looks a little weak or transparent, so that's because the app opacity is only half. So I'm just going to put that all the way up. There we go. So now if I click on this and hit G, I can now drag this to wherever I want it to go. And I'm going to put it here. And then if I hit S, S for scale, and then start dragging my mouse, you don't have to hold S, by the way. Just tap S and then drag your mouse to however big you want that, and then click to release that, and then hit A again to deselect all. And that is actually looking pretty good. I like that. Maybe up a little bit more, just like that. All right. Now, with our I'm will learn you stuff, we're going to type that down here too. I could just add in more text, but instead what I'm going to do is select this one, hit Shift D to duplicate it, and I want it straight down, so I'm going to lock it on the Y by hitting Y. Go straight down, and I put it right about here. Okay, come back over to my F, and I'm going to change this regular here to something different. So get rid of this filter. And in order to see what all of these look like, I'm just going to hit the thumbnails up here. And now you can see kind of a preview of what you might be getting. So this one kind of looks good. I'm just going to go ahead and try this one, double click that. And tab to go into edit mode, backspace, and I'm going to type in I'm will learn ya stuff. Okay, scroll on a little bit here. Tab to go back into object mode. Now, this is too big, so I want to scale this down. And you see this here, it's going to scale it right where this manipulator is here. This is the object origin here. So if I scale it, hit S, and then just drag my mouse, it's going to scale that down. It's going to scale it from that point. Okay, and we're going to change that point here in a second, but I'm going to scroll out here and I'm going to scale that up just a little bit more, like about right there. All right, there you go. Now, before I change the origin, I want to actually change the color of this. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select the color and change this to a yellow. But as you can see, what's happening as I change the color here, it's changing the color of both of them. And that is not what I want. And the reason it's changing it is because they're both assigned to the same material. So to change that, first I'm going to change this back to white. And a trick to do this is just to bring this all the way down to black first, and then bring that back up. And it was a little bit off-white. Maybe it was 0.8 here. So 0.8, tab 0.8, tab 0.8. There we go. And enter. Okay, now make sure this one is selected, which we have. Hit A a couple times. If I hit A, I'm selecting all of them. Now they're all deselected. Make sure this is the only one selected. And then scroll up here to where you see this material 4. If I scroll out here, this says material 4. You can see this 2. This means there's 2 users. These 2 here are using this material. So if I click that, that means it made a separate one for the one we have selected. So we have material 6 now instead of material 4. And now if I decide to come over here and change the color, boom, it's just changing this one here. And I'm going to change it to right about like that. Perfect. I like it. A to deselect just to see how that looks. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And then I'm going to select that again. And now I want to change the origin to the center of the mass or the center of the surface mass. To do that is a little complicated. It's Shift. Now hold all of these down. Shift, Control, Alt, C. We'll give you that. It's the most convoluted keyboard shortcut. But anyway, what we want to do is origin to center of mass surface because there is no volume. It's just a flat surface. So we're going to click that, boom, right in the middle there. And the reason I want to do that is because I'm going to add a modifier that will allow me to curve this. By the way, this is how I did it in my promo video, and I had forgotten, so I'm showing you how I originally did this. So over here, this little wrench right on the other side of the F is our modifier tab. If we go add modifier and we go down to simple deform, and then we click bend, and you can see, boom, it's already doing something. I don't want it to bend up, I want it to bend down, so I'm just going to take the angle and just start dragging that down, and oh, look at that. I will learn your stuff. just like that. I'm going to drag it up just a little bit here. Go back to my font. I'm going to just adjust this just a little bit more, show you what all you can do. Your offset here is going to control your thickness. So it's going to make it thicker or thinner. You got to be careful with that too, because if it's too thick or too thin, then you can kind of see you get some problems there. You can also mess with the size here, but this will like do some weird stuff with that origin there. I'm not going to use this. I'm just going to maybe scale this up just by hitting S and scale that up a little bit. Maybe scale that back down a little bit. So some other things you can do down here is the spacing. So if letter spacing. So if I click this and drag, it's going to drag that letter spacing out. And I actually think I kind of like that. Maybe 1.1. Yeah, just so that it's a little easier to read. They're not all bunched together. But that means I'm going to have to rotate this. So I'm going to hit R over here and just rotate that around just a little bit. Move that and probably scale that back down a little bit, just like that. And this isn't going to look exactly like I had it in the promo video, but you kind of get the point there. Now I can just do the Shift Control Alt C again, do the center to origin, but then that's going to mess that up again and I'll have to change the angle. So I'm going to undo that and we're just going to leave it just like that. So A to deselect, and yeah, I think I'm going to see if I can do the offset just a little bit more there. Yeah, just so that those words are a little bit thicker. Yeah. And I may decide not to use this font. That doesn't look too bad there. Except for that A at the end. I don't know why there was an A there. Oh, I must be in edit. I am in edit mode. Haha. Backspace, backspace, backspace. There we go. A, there we go. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. I'm gonna keep it just like that. Okay, now for the exporting. So we're gonna do the same exact thing we did in Google Slides, where we are just exporting this as a PNG, where you have a transparent background with just the text. So in our Blender render, the way you do that is go to your render tab, scroll down to shading, and then we want to click and drag our mouse over all of those to deselect all of those, because we don't care about anything there. And we don't want Blender to do extra work. Where it says alpha here, it says sky, we want to change that to transparent. And that's all we have to do. And of course, make sure your output down here is PNG, and you have RGBA for that alpha selected. Now with that, we've got 1920 by 1080. We want to make sure that's 100%. And then we can click render. And I have the image editor open here, and then it just opened up that image editor here. And for some reason it's stuck on there. I don't know what just happened and why it's stuck. Boop. Okay, so I just had a big problem where when I tried to render this, Blender did something strange to where my mouse kind of got stuck and I couldn't get out of this view. It just kept dragging the render view around, and I did not save it. So I had to redo everything that I just told you because nothing was saved. So I've saved it a couple times. We're at 0512 now. And that is a perfect reminder of why you should always save and save often. So I'm going to try this again here. Remember, let's see, make sure my shading, yep, got to get rid of this and make this transparent again. Remember, we're in the Blender render. Okay, and PNG, yes, RGBA, 100% there. I'm going to save it before I do this again. And why not save as another iteration? 513 can't be too safe. I'm going to change this from image editor to new window. Oh, it's doing it again. Yeah, so it did it again, and I'm not sure why it's doing that. Basically, my mouse just grabs the background and I can't get out of it, and I can't, no matter what I press. Boop. Okay, after a lot of trial and error, I did actually figure out what was going on. If we go to our user preferences over here, I just pulled up the user preferences, and I just typed in pan. And if you scroll down to image, it says view pan. And the second one here, and you can see it's the second one because it's the only one that has the arrow. All the other ones has an X. Don't click the X. Just if you see one with an arrow, that means it's been modified. And so my modification was wheel up by accident. And for some reason, this plus the other settings that I did when I switched the rotate view and pan view with the shift middle mouse and just the regular middle mouse, in combination with this, it just caused Blender to really not understand what was going on. So all I did was just click this arrow to where it says shift middle mouse, and it got rid of that restore as well. And all is well now. I can use the image editor preview and the render view just like normal. So just make sure if something like that happens, you can come over here to the is input and key configuration and see if maybe you accidentally made something that you didn't intend to. Okay, so save user settings and get rid of that. I'm going to change this to keep UI again, hit render, and we're going to go to our rendering tab. Here we have our transparent background with that gray checkerboard. I'm going to hit image, save as image, and then we're going to do, I'm just going to say text underscore 01 underscore ab cat dot png, enter. Remember over here, we have PNG and RGBA, save as image, and there you go. Going back over to our just video editing, you don't see anything because we are in our new scene that we made. Now I renamed this text after Blender crashed, but going back to our mix 1, okay, and hit 0, to center that timeline cursor. This is the original one we created in Google Slides. I'm actually just going to hide that for a second. Well, before I hide it, page down and then hide. Okay, and then Shift A, we're going to add in our image. And here we go, text 1. See, here's our chalkboard. This is the one we created before. This is the one we created just now. And there you go. Blend mode to overdrop, boom. So it's the same thing here. So there you go. That is how you can use Blender's 3D text, even though we didn't use it in 3D, but you can use that to overlay pretty text onto your video. Now, a couple more things. I'm going to go back to our text scene here and go to just default. A couple things that I did, you wouldn't have been able to notice with this font, but down here with this font, if I hit G and lock that to the Z axis, and if I go down, by default, you can see these lines going through there. Don't let that trip you up. That's just the grid. If I check this background image, as you can see, that's where the lines are going through the grid. But basically what I did was hit G and Z and just pulled that up past that grid. And what's happening here, if I hit shift and turn, basically I'm just going either below the grid or above the grid. So that's just something else you can play around with there. Now another thing is if you actually want to create 3D text, it's pretty easy. I'm just going to come over here. You can see this is just paper thin. It's not really 3D yet. But if I come over to my fonts tab and extrude, if I drag that out, you can see then it becomes 3D. Ta-da! And then you can have a 3D effect. And if I hit 0, and then if I hit R for rotate, it's going to rotate just in 2D right here. But if I hit Y, it's going to actually rotate around that Y. And you can see I'm rotating it in 3D. So back that out here. There we go. Just like that. There you go. So you have a little kind of a 3D thing. Now, this might not look too cool without having faces and the sides different colors because you can't really tell that much without them. But if I hit shift and that, you can see that's actually, it is 3D. Now, something else you might want to do with this. So this is perspective, and if I move this over here, I will be able to see more of the back rather than if I move it over here. You can see the perspective kind of changed. I don't know if you can see that here, but basically that will kind of skew your view on a 2D flat plane like this. But what I can do is show this a little bit more clearly if I just add in a cube. So Shift A, Mesh Cube. And then I'm going to go down here where it says Material Mode. I'm going to change it to Solid Mode. And then if I just move this back and forth, you can see right in the middle here, it just looks completely 2D. If I deselect that, it's just one side you can see of that cube. But then if I select it and then move it, you can start to see the other sides of that cube this way and the other sides of that cube this way, because you're seeing the perspective behind it. Also, the same thing, if I not only move it left and right, same thing up and down, you can start seeing those sides. Here's the back side of it. Or if I grab it on the Z and move it up closer to the camera or back under the grid, far away from everything else, it looks tiny there, but it's actually just far away. It's not changed size, it's just changed position. I'm going to move this back over here a little bit. I'm not going to move it back up, but what I'm going to do is show you, instead of perspective view, I'm going to show you how you can achieve an orthographic view. So if you select your camera, you can either select it by selecting this border over here, just like that, or if you are in your outliner here, you can go here and just select that camera. Here's the cube, here's the camera. And now you'll have these different options here. Click on the camera if it's not already selected up here. And then down here, you see the lens. The lens type right now is perspective. If you click orthographic, then everything changes. And the square seems to have disappeared. But it didn't disappear. If I scroll out and pan over, it's right here. But instead, what has happened is that orthographic mode is the absence of perspective. Here's perspective, here's orthographic. And so it doesn't matter how far up or down or left to right or back and forth I move this cube, it will always look 2D. And if I break out of that, you can see it's still way down here, but if I go back into the camera mode, it just looks like it's just right up there. Now I'm going to go up here and just set the location back to 0 for all of these. And just move this over a little bit here. You can't see any side. But if I go back to my perspective mode, boom, now you can see the side of the cube. It's probably more apparent here where there's a better shadow. So here, this side, you can see 3 sides of the cube. If I go back here and hit orthographic, you can see just one side. But this is actually really good for motion graphics. So if you wanted to use Blender to do motion graphics, this way you can put objects on top of or behind other objects, and you don't change the size. So if you needed like a font a certain size, it won't change that size, but you can lay them over on top of each other, just like this. So right now, let's see what we have here. Are we in orthographic? Yeah. So we're in orthographic mode, and the text is above our cube. So let's change that. Press 0. I'm going to select the cube and then hit G and then Z to move that up. And you can see I'm moving it above and below the text there and the grid. You can kind of see that as well. But the size isn't changing. It doesn't look like it's getting closer to the camera at all. And again, this is really useful if you need something to be an exact size and exact dimensions, but you want to overlay it on top of something else. Now, obviously, if I change back to perspective mode, boom, you can see that if I am moving this back and forth, it's going to change that size. Now, that's also something that you might want in your motion graphics. So it's just something that you're going to have to decide what's more important there. Okay, so there you go. That is how you can use Blender in a whole bunch of different ways to create beautiful text to overlay onto your video. So now next time we're going to get in the bulleted list effect that I talked about last time. I said it was going to be this time, but I thought the 3D text would be kind of something that I should go over. And so now next video will be the bulleted list. So you will see me over there.